Hello, dear viewers. Namaskar. Welcome to Moksha Media. You are with Moksha Heramat. Today, I would like to speak to you something about the scope and nature of a language. Language is a social productivity. It is a product of a society. You cannot imagine a language without a society. So many linguists opine that language is a social product. According to Charles Darwin, the father of the theory of evolution, opined that the two inventions are very important in the history of a human beings. They are fire and language. First invention is fire, and the second most invention is the language, because fire and language have changed the lifestyle of a human being. They changed the lifestyle of a society. So, fire and language play a prominent role even today. You cannot imagine the cultural and civilized society without fire and language. Fire changed the appearance of man. Language changed the not only appearance of man, but it also civilized him and cultured him and brought all the world into a small unit. So, whatever we can deny, but one cannot deny the importance of fire and language. That is why even today language plays a prominent role in the life of a society. That is why it is said it is a social productivity. Of course, language is phenomenal. It depends upon the phenomena in which it is born and bred, in which it is evolved and spread. It is not only phenomenal, it is also hereditary. When we talk of phenomenal atmosphere of a language, we have to talk of the hereditary aspect of a language. Whatever is collected, whatever is thought, whatever is felt is passed from one generation to another generation through the words or through the written form of a language. Written form of a language comes later, but in the beginning we have to depend upon the spoken form of a language. So that is why man is considered a highly developed human being compared to animals. That doesn't mean animals don't have their language. They have also their own language, but the animals' language is not that much of developed compared to humans' language. The language of a man is highly developed, complicated, advanced, and he can say whatever he wants or whatever one wants to do it in the society or in the phenomena. For example, some words pass on from environment to environment, and some words are passed on from hereditary to hereditary. For example, a man can think of so many cultural aspects or so many religious aspects of a human being. If a one is born in Karnataka, he can think of Badami, Pattadakallu, Haivale, Hampi, and of course Rashtrakutas, Vijayanagara Arasas, and Chalukyas, Kadambas, etc., etc. He can think of Dravidian languages. He can think of Kannada language, which is the product of Proto-Dravidian language. Of course, here we have to think of this a phenomenal one. At the same time, that phenomenal one becomes a hereditary one. So, language has these two qualities, that is phenomenal as well as hereditary. We talk of mother tongue. Of course, one's mother tongue may be different. One's mother tongue depends upon where he is born, where he is bred. For example, if a child born in the state of Karnataka, his mother tongue may be, one's mother tongue may become, its mother tongue may become Kannada, or as the case may be. If he is born in Karnataka and bred in America, his mother tongue would become a phenomenal language of that America in which he is born and in which he is bred. So, the mother tongue depends upon the birth of a child and at the same time the growth of a child. So, we have to take into account these two things when we want to decide the mother tongue of a child. If one is born and bred in the same environment or in the same phenomena, in a caste community, religious, cultural, etc., of course, one's mother tongue would become the tongue of that community, the tongue of that environment, the tongue of that phenomena. But one is born here and bred somewhere, his mother tongue might be different. So anyhow, mother tongue or anyhow a language is a form of communication. It is first and foremost is used for communication. But as the time goes on and on, a language goes beyond a communication. It bridges the gap between communities. It bridges the gap between castes, cultures, countries, religions, etc., etc. It goes in a different way and brings together all the human beings. Now the world is so small one. We can be here in a minute, we can be somewhere in another minute. We can here in this country and in hours we can be somewhere in another country. So here the language has brought all human beings together and it tied the human relationship. And one language can become a tribal language sometimes and the same tribal language become an advanced language. For example, English. English was a nomadic language of Germans. It was a dialectical language of German. But as the time went on and on, that nomadic language, English, has become a language of civilized and cultured and a language of a particular country, this country or that country. That means the growth of a language depends upon its development and its use, its productivity, and its civilization, culture, etc., etc. So we cannot say the language this and that. Now we have some languages. They are called dead languages. Once upon a time they were very glorious languages. They were classic languages, but now we cannot say of this regarding those languages. For example, Sanskrit, Arabic, Prakrit, and Latin languages, Greek languages, Slovene language, etc., etc. Once upon a time there was a language called Dalmatian language. Only one person spoke that Dalmatian language. He was a worker in a mining area. And when he was died in the Visakha mining, at that time, the person, along with that person, that Dalmatian language is also dead. Now no one speaks of Dalmatian language. No one uses the Dalmatian language. That means the languages change from time to time, depends upon the growth of the persons using that language, advancing that language, and developing that language. So once upon a time, Kannada was the official language of Karnataka, Karunadu. At the time of Chalukyas, the Kannada language spread to Afghanistan. It was the official language of Maharashtra. It was the official language of northern states. Even today we have so many languages which are there in Pakistan. They are the part and parcel of the Dravidian languages. So, language spreads from one place to another place. The language which has become an official language may become a subordinate language after some time. We have seen it in the regime of Britishers. So many glorious languages became the subordinate languages of English. English language doesn't have that much of history compared to Kannada language, compared to some Indian languages, compared to Tamil, compared to even Telugu and Malayalam, that English doesn't have that much of history. But nowadays, English is spoken all over the world compared to Kannada, Tamil, Telugu and Malayalam, etc., etc. English was a nomadic language of Germans, but the German language has become confined to Germany, whereas English language is spread to other continents. That shows the development of a language. That is why we cannot say the language will be here only and will be considered there only, etc., etc. It is always growing, but it depends upon the phenomena, it depends upon the hereditary, it depends upon the genes, it depends upon the use of that language by the speakers of that language. It depends upon the inventions, it depends upon the grammar, it depends upon the use, it depends upon the written form of that language, etc., etc. So, a language can become a phenomenal as well as hereditary. Hereditary in the sense it is passed from one generation to another generation, it is passed from one community to another community. For example, if a person born in Karnataka is a Veerashaiva, the words Ishtalinga, Shatasthala would be passed to the next generation of his community, of his religions very easily. Yes, same thing it can be said of other religions also, other societies also. If you take into account the Vokkaliga language in the southern part of Karnataka, automatically it is passed from one generation to another generation, speaking that language in that community. Some words are passed from one generation to another generation very easily. But the persons from other parts of Karnataka cannot be understood that language to that extent as that is understood in those communities. So you can see the transparency of the language, no doubt about it. So language has its own scope, it has its own nature. It goes beyond a certain territory, it goes beyond a certain state, it goes beyond a country and country to country and continent to continent. So we say that the language is a universal one. But in order to become a universal language, it depends upon the use of that language by the speakers of that language. Here we have to understand the linguists, that is the persons who study language very scientifically. They are called linguists. Here we have to remember that Charles Frank Hackett, he was an American linguist. He was lived during 1916 and 2000 years of common era. He identified 16 features of a language, and afterwards another feature is added to it and it becomes totally 17. So by those 16 features that C.F. Hackett tries to convince the importance of language and tries to show the nature and scope of a language. He says those 17 are features, but here I am not going to define those features, but I am simply put forth before you those features which play a prominent role in the development of a language. So those features are vocabulary, auditory channel, broadcast transmission and directional receptions, transitoriness of a language, interchangeability of a language, total feedback, specialization of a language, semanticity of a language, arbitrariness of a language, discreteness of a language, displacement of a language, productivity of a language, traditional transmission, duality of a patterning, pre-verification, reflexiveness, and learnability of a language. These are the features Charles Frank Hackett traced. In one way or another way, these features help us to understand a language in a better way. They help us to make a human being a more cultured, a more civilized citizen of a country, of a territory, of a continent. So, here development should be used in a proper way. But in the name of development, we make so many unscientific, undeveloped activities which make the life unbearable. Nowadays we see in Karnataka, so many persons are in the position of losing their lands which tilled since time immemorial of their forefathers. Now in the name of development, their right is going to be deprived. But it is done in the name of a development. Here the question before us is it a development? If it is a development, what sort of development it might be? These are the questions we have to ask ourselves. Of course, these words are entered into the language. So, language is a productive one. So, once upon a time, the word Bengaluru is not there in the dictionary in the life of a man. But now the word Bengaluru is inserted in a dictionary. It is used in the common life of a people of Karnataka or throughout the world. Bengaluru is a word, a name of a city in Karnataka, the capital of Karnataka. Bengaluru becomes Bengaluru in order to show the connection through internet to the world. Once upon a time, we don't have the word Bengaluru, but now Bengaluru is a common phenomenon because of the digital development in our communication. Now we have a digital language. It has its own course. So like this language is developed in a different shape, in a different form, in a different ways, adapting and adjusting so many words on and on. That shows the adaptability of language, that shows the elasticity of a language. What word is not there once upon a time is now there in the lives of human beings. Especially it is common to Karnatakans. It is common to people living in Bengaluru. Is it? So, that is why the productivity of language should be taken into consideration. The phenomenal and hereditary character of that language should be taken into consideration. So, like this, the words, like this, the language goes on and on developing. Like this, the language goes on and on developing the society, developing the human beings also in the strict sense. So, these are the things I have shared with you. I hope you have understood what I have told. Subscribe and share it, and see you in the next episode. Thank you. Namaskar.